Hi, Zach Reiser here, and I'm back with another bass effects review video. So today I have the pleasure of running through the Strymon BigSky. I used to have one of these on my boards, and I missed it so much that I bought another. I haven't had this in my hands too long this week though, since I got it, so I have no presets loaded on here. So I'm going to run through all of my favorite modes and just do a little bit of tweaking and hopefully give you guys a good demonstration of what it sounds like on bass. Alright, let's jump into it. So my bass is dry tone, Dingwall ABZ 6-string on both pickups. Okay, so let's start with a small setting, which is room. So meant to emulate just a small space. I'm going to switch to my bridge pickup. This is kind of giving you exactly what it sounds like, the sound of a small room. Has two main settings, room and what do they call it, I think, or studio and concert. Studio and club, sorry. Club's just a tiny bit bigger, has a little bit more pre-delay. You can kind of hear that little bit of delay in the front. I like small room reverbs with sublines as well. It adds a little bit of just air to the sub. So without the reverb, here's the OC2 into the source audio OFD. Into the room reverb on the BigSky. Cool. Now, of course, I could crank the delay up, I could crank the pre-delay up and get these bigger sounding reverbs, but the room reverb is not the reverb I like to use for those big verbs. So let's jump into the hall, which I love. All right, let's hear a little bit of the hall with my dry bass on the neck pickup. Just so pretty. One thing I do love about the BigSky is every single verb is very soft and very luscious. You don't get a lot of harsh sounds coming out of the BigSky. For instance, the Eventide space I actually think is a little bit more complex in some of the kind of nasty sounds you can get coming out of it. But if you want just pretty gorgeous sounding reverb, the BigSky is pretty hard to beat. Let's crank up the decay a little bit and the mix on this hall setting. Similar kind of stuff, dry bass into a bigger hall reverb. So pretty. Let's hear a little bit of a sub sound into this bigger hall just for fun. So I'll put the OC2 and the OFD back on here. You can hear it's so cool. You get all the bottom, you get the attack of the note, but it bleeds together all your notes and makes it much more mysterious and kind of creepy. I could spend an entire video on almost each one of these modes, so I'm going to keep going through them here, and if I have time, I'll come back and do another video going into more detail of the BigSky's kind of specificities. Okay, I am actually going to skip the plate. It's a great sounding plate reverb, but it sounds very similar to a lot of the other modes, and I don't think it's quite as interesting as some of the other ones, but it is a very useful reverb if you like clean plate reverbs, but I'm going to skip it. Okay, Not going to spend too much time on this one because, yet again, I just don't use it that much, but it's a cool verb nevertheless. This is the spring setting, and it's a very expansive spring reverb. So the basic spring sound, kind of just to get us going, is this. So you can get that kind of cool spring tank reverb sound. However, it sounds kind of similar to the hall settings, etc. So I'm going to tweak some of the settings to get a really crazy sounding spring. What I did is I turned the dwell to the overdrive setting, and then I turned up the number of springs to 3 instead of 2. And now we get this. This really cool metallic nature comes into the settings, or comes into the sound of the spring reverb. Let's hear that with some heavy overdrive here. Now let's put it into this metallic spring reverb. Let's turn the decay down. Try something else into this metallic spring reverb here. Let's try that synthier setting. So let's do Boss OC2 into a gated fuzz into a downward envelope. Just to give you an idea real quick without the spring on. That's where we're at. So we're getting a lot of this extra high tinniness coming through that we wouldn't have had if we hadn't used the spring. All right, moving on from this crazy spring setting, let's go to the swell reverb. Some instant pad going on here, right? The swell setting's pretty simple. You can change the rise time, you can change the way that the rise curve works, meaning like linear, exponential, logarithmic, etc. Let's turn up the decay a little bit. So, I mean, this is kind of about as far as I would take the swell. I don't do a lot of truly ambient music, but man, you can make some absolutely gorgeous textures with the swell. Just a little bit more to give you more of an idea. For fun, since I am a bass player, let's hear some low notes with the swell. Gives you a good idea of the swell verb. Moving on to bloom, one of the most unique settings on the BigSky. So the bloom blooms your reverb in at a certain decay rate after the attack of your note. Kind of similar to swell, but a little bit more unique, I think, than the swell reverb. Let's just hear what this preset sounds like. And you can hear the tail of the reverb is coming in after I play my note. Alright, one of my all-time favorite settings though on the BigSky period is this. Max feedback, but with minimal bloom length. And I'm also going to turn the mix up a little bit. And they call this their ghost preset. this kind of creepy high-end resonance in the top. I'm going to turn the mix down a little bit. Same setting, but with the OC2 and an overdrive. So cool. It's like you have a little keyboard kind of trailing your bass line there in the background. Okay, moving on to Cloud, another one of my favorite settings on the BigSky. This is probably the prettiest reverb in the BigSky to me. It's just, you can get some gorgeous textures. So let's play a little bit here. So diffusion is essentially how smeared your reverb is, how smooth it is. So this is max smoothness here. I'm going to turn the mix up even more. About as ethereal of a reverb as you can get. It just sounds like you're floating in heaven. You can hear it's just a smooth wash. Now, let's turn the diffusion all the way down. So now it's going to sound almost like little tiny delays, almost little raindrops here. So this reverb unit is not meant to be a subtle reverb, in my opinion. I feel like it shines at these huge, huge big sounding reverbs. Let's turn the decay up a little bit more. Now the mix is almost maxed, so without the reverb, kind of did this in my Eventide space demo a little bit. And now let's put on this big Cloud setting. I'm gonna put the mix down a little bit to get a little bit more of my dry signal. Let's hear this with the Superego a little bit, just because it's so pretty. So Superego by itself. Let's hear that into Cloud. Turn the mod on a little bit at the end there too. You can kind of hear that vibrato going on. Now this is the Cloud setting, but you can hear it almost sounds vocal-like there. But now let's move on to the actual vocal reverb, which is chorale. I'm going to change the vowel sound. Demonstration of the reverb by itself. I'm going to take my dry signal out completely, play something kind of similar. Let's change the vowel sound again. How about just Oz? Very unique reverb. I think this one is, kind of a little bit of a one-trick pony. It's kind of once you use it, you've used it, but man, it is such a cool sound. Let's try the chorale reverb with the mix back in, but let's try it with that Superego again. So here's the Superego by, oh, you've heard the Superego by itself. Here's the Superego with this chorale setting. Very, very cool. All right, let's move on to the Shimmer. Now, the Shimmer verb is very similar to the Shimmer verb in the Eventide space or any kind of crystal setting, really. But I do find, yet again, the BigSky is sweeter than all of these other reverbs. So I'm going to go with a very classic Shimmer setting here. Okay. And now the cool thing about the BigSky's Shimmer is, of course, you can change the frequency of the shimmers like you can on the Eventide. But you also have 3 different modes of shimmering. You have input, regen, and then both together. Now, regen sounds exactly pretty much, in my opinion, like the Shimmer verb on the Eventide. Okay. But input takes out the harshness of the chiminess and makes it just this very smooth kind of keyboard pad sound. Same settings, but with input. It's just so watery. And liquid. Let's try it with some single notes. Turn the mix down a little bit. And now let's try it with some OC2. So this input version of Shimmer to me is much more musical and much prettier than most Shimmer reverbs. This is by far my favorite Shimmer reverb out there on the market. Let's move on, though. I just don't have much time to get into all these things. Of course, you can go to Strymon's website and you can see tons and tons of audio examples of these with lots of different sounds going. All right. So the next up is Magneto. This is one I don't use very often, but essentially it's like using tape head delay to make a reverb. So it's kind of got this delayed sound. Very unique sounding reverb, though. It's very cool. So non-linear, this is basically what I use for reverse reverbs. You can hear it kind of it's different than swell. It sounds like swell, but it's actually playing your reverb in reverse. I'm going to put my dry signal back in. I find reverse reverbs really cool when you're using any kind of distortion. Into that. Let's take a crystal setting from the Eventide. So here's the crystal setting. Let's put that into a nonlinear reverb. Takes away the attack and adds this softness. So that was a crystal setting from the Eventide into the nonlinear verb. Like I said, I could make an entire video on almost every single mode of the BigSky, just like I could of almost any algorithm on the Eventide. So hopefully at least you're getting kind of an overview of what the Big Sky can do for you. If you enjoyed, please subscribe below, and I will be back very soon with more pedal demos and performance videos. Thanks.